We left off last video getting our custom annotations set up on our map view, but we don't have our badge logic implemented yet, and that is the final step. So in this video, that's what we're gonna do. To talk through how we're gonna do this, let's go to our CloudKit Manager. So utilities, managers, CloudKit Manager, and what we're going to do, right? We did this get checked in profile dictionary right here. We're basically gonna do something very similar, except we're gonna tweak it a little bit. And I'm gonna write out this separate function, and then once I get it written out, we're gonna talk about why I chose to separate them and why I chose not to combine these very similar functions. But we'll get into that detail after I write it out. That way you can see both functions and compare and contrast. Okay, so I'm literally going to copy and paste it down here, because again, it's very similar and minor changes. So instead of get checked in profiles dictionary, I'm going to get checked in profiles count, and we're not going to return an array of DDG profile. We're just going to return an int, right? Because I don't need the whole profile. I just need the count, right? I'm just showing a number on a badge. So I don't want to like create all these DDG profiles needlessly. We still are checking for the same thing, right? We still are checking for that is checked in nil check is equal to 1. We're still doing that. We're still querying the profiles. So we're using that predicate. Our query is still the same. Desired keys. Let me uncomment this because, like I said, I just want a number. I just want the count. I don't need to download the whole profile. And if you remember me saying a couple videos ago, like if I don't need to download the avatar, that is something I absolutely don't want to download because that's just unnecessary data. So DDG profile avatar, absolutely gone. However, I do need to know is checked in because I need to know where they're checked in at. Again, similar to our network call above. So that is the only thing I'm going to download. Remember, I'm trying to keep this download as minimal as I possibly can. And the reason being, if this app does get a little bit of traction, I could be downloading hundreds of profiles. So right now I'm only downloading the is checked in reference, which is just a UUID. So it's essentially a string. So it's very, very minimal data. So that's why we want the desired keys to just be that is checked in reference. And then same thing, we are going to build a dictionary, except again, I'm not building a dictionary of an array of DDG profiles. I'm building a dictionary of the checked in record ID, which again is our location ID, in an int. So for example, this is going to be like Chipotle 4, meaning 4 people are checked into Chipotle, or AC Kitchen and Lounge 7, right? That's the dictionary I want to build. Now in this operations fetch record block, remember this is streaming the records as they get it. Well, I don't want to create a profile. We're not even dealing with that, right? I don't want to needlessly create all those profiles. So we are going to need our location reference, right? Because same thing as we do down here, we need location reference.record ID. We still need that because remember that's how we tell, each location. So I don't have a profile. And if you remember, I kind of mentioned this in the words in an edit on a previous video. We didn't have to check against the profile. So what I can do here is the record we get back, remember, is a DDG profile record. However, the only key I'm getting back is the is checked in key. But luckily, that's the one we're going to check against. So I can do record and then for key DDG profile dot is checked in, right? That's the key that I want to check against. But remember, I have to cast it. Whenever you check against just the raw record, it doesn't know what type it is. So we have to cast it. So because this is an optional, we can do as ck record dot reference, and then we can just return because if for some reason there is no location reference, we'll just return out. We don't want to show an error or anything. And remember, we mentioned this last time when we were building, this network call up here, getting our checked in profiles originally. This should never happen, right? Because remember, we're only getting it back if it is checked in equals 1. So as long as this is in sync, this should always have a value. But again, that's kind of our backup check just in case. Okay, now the way we create our dictionary is going to be different because again, we're not just having an array of DDG profiles at our key, we're just having an int at our key. So essentially what we need to do is as these records are coming in, we need to check for what count is currently at, say Chipotle, for example. If the count is 0, go ahead and make the count 1. If the count is 3, we're going to increment that count for every time we see Chipotle. So that's how we're going to build this dictionary where we're keeping a count of how many profiles are at each location. So to do that, we're going to do if let count equals, and it's going to be checked in profiles at the key location reference dot record ID. So we're going to say basically if this has a value, right? Because that's the way the if let works, just for super basic review. Hopefully you know how if let works. But to review, if let this block right here is going to execute if there is a value there, where the else block will execute if it's nil. So if it's nil, let's do that first, right? So if there's nothing at this record ID yet in our dictionary, we want to do checked in profiles, the value for the key of location reference.record ID. So again, this is the, if the value of our int is nil at Chipotle, again, just as an example, we want to make that value 1 because this is the first time we've seen it. So it's the first time we're building our dictionary. So the count is 1. However, if the count is not nil, that means we've already seen it. We've made a 1. We just want to increment this. So we'll get the value for key, right? Checked in profiles. So the value at location reference.record ID. So, right, this is not nil. So we want to do equals count plus 1. Right? Because count is the value here. So for example, the first time through, right, this is Chipotle. We didn't have anybody there. We made it 1. The second time we see this Chipotle record ID, we already have it 1. So that means count is not going to be nil, right? Because the value at checked in profiles for our key location.record ID is a 1. So it's not nil. So we go in there and we just make count plus 1. So now it's 2, now it's 3, etc. So this is how we build our dictionary. So our key is the record ID, again, Chipotle. And then the int is how many times we've seen that record ID, right? So if 4 people are checked into Chipotle, that's going to be a 4. And then the rest of the function, I'll clean up that extra space there, right? Upon completion, if there's an error, cool, we'll show it. We'll delete this comment because that's from the last one. We'll handle the cursor stuff in an optimization video. And then cool, if everything's good, completed, success, and we'll return the checked in profiles, which again is our dictionary of CK record ID and an int. Okay, so that is our separate get checked in profiles count. I went through that kind of quickly because it is very, very similar to what we did a couple videos ago when we made this dictionary of DDG profiles. So now let's talk about why I didn't combine these. Well, first, let's say how you could possibly combine these, right? So the main difference is our desired keys. So when we're getting our dictionary of DDG profiles, we're getting the whole profile, and I talked about why I did that. So you could easily pass in a Boolean like needs full profile, and based on that Boolean, you can conditionally set the desired keys, right? If needs full profile is true, give me all the desired keys. If it's false, just give me, these desired keys of just the is checked in. So you can add that little bit of logic. However, our dictionary is also different too. Like I chose to return the dictionary of an int, and then you saw we just built that dictionary. However, you could argue, right, that if you're going to build this array of profiles, you could easily do, array.count to get that int. So I do see the argument on how you could combine these because again, they are very similar. Okay, so now you see how you could combine them. Let me tell you why I didn't, and then if you agree with my reasoning, cool. If you don't, combine them. Hey, do you? That is, again, the art of programming. And hopefully throughout this course, you've noticed that I like to give you a couple different viewpoints on how to look at it before I give you my reasons. And that is because, again, a lot of this art of programming type stuff is very subjective and it's kind of based on your coding philosophy and what trade-offs you value. So I don't want to, force my opinions on you. So I do try to give you multiple viewpoints. And like I said, if you disagree with me, it's fine on the subjective stuff. So again, I hope I'm making that clear and hope I'm not like forcing my coding philosophy and opinions on you, but at least you see like how I do it and how I look at things. And then hopefully you can make an informed decision. Anyway, why I didn't combine these is because they're for 2 separate screens. So right, our checked in profiles dictionary, I'll pull up here. You see that is for our location list view with all the avatars and stuff. Whereas the one we just built, right, this profiles.count, this is for the map screen and the badges. And what I have seen in my experience is that products are constantly evolving, especially when you're early and you're launching an MVP. Screens are going to change, functionality is going to change, or maybe based on customer feedback, you decide to change something. So because these are on 2 separate screens, I think it's highly likely that those screens are going to change or evolve over time. And I think if you tightly couple those 2 screens within this one network call, I think it's a very high likelihood that you're going to end up ripping them apart down the road anyway. Or worse, that if you do need some extra logic because the screen changes and you've combined these 2 network calls, well, now to accommodate the new change, hypothetically, maybe now you have to add a little bit of extra logic. And now your function is slowly getting more and more convoluted with all these checks and stuff in it. So again, what I have found, because these are on completely separate screens, I would prefer to separate them out, optimize each one for their task, and then this way they can grow and evolve and change on separate paths. Again, I've just found that to be much easier. So that is my reasoning. But again, if someone argued for no, you should combine them because they are so similar, I may not agree with it, but I would be like, that's not, you're not wrong, you know? So now let's talk about the downsides of CloudKit, right? Because, you know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So a lot of this stuff we're doing, right, where we have to have this is nil checked, we have to build our dictionary on the client side. If you built your own custom server, like a lot of this logic could be done on the server and you would just have an endpoint, you know, maybe your endpoint was get checked in profiles dictionary and you get the exact dictionary you need. You don't have to filter out the nil check. All that logic is being done on the server, right? So the downside of CloudKit is if your app would benefit from a lot of server-side logic, CloudKit might not be the best route. However, if your app doesn't need a lot of server-side logic, it's pretty good. And now let's talk about the trade-offs, right? So yeah, it kind of sucks that we have to do this nil check and we have to build the dictionary on the client side, but that's not a lot of work, right? So what's the alternative? Are you gonna go out and build your own custom backend, which 95% of iOS developers don't know how to do? Or are you gonna hire a backend developer just to fix this? So again, my opinion, this is fine for CloudKit. Yeah, it's a little bit of extra work, but it's nothing too crazy. But again, I wanna point out, if all this logic you have to do does start to get crazy, that's when I would reconsider CloudKit because that is one of the weaknesses. Okay, so now let's put this function here, this get checked in profiles count into action. I did add the operation. Well, a lot of times that's why I copy and paste, don't get me wrong, because if I rewrite it, I may forget stuff like this. So that's already there. We added the operation, so it will fire off. So where do we want to call this? Let's go to our location map view, right? Well, I want to call it an onAppear on the map view. And I want to call it an onAppear because I do want this to fire off every time somebody comes to the map screen because these numbers on the badges are going to constantly be updating as people check in and check out. So I do want to get a fresh one every time I come to the screen. So here in onAppear, I need to call that, but I don't have the function. So let's go to our location map view model and let's create another function under our get locations function, func get checked in counts. And in here's where we're going to do CloudKit manager.share.get checked in profiles count, right? And completed, hit return. I'll scroll up a little bit so my face might not be blocking it. Type result. Again, we've done this 1,000 times by now. Hopefully you know what's coming. Except I'm gonna mix it up. Normally I go right into the switch, but I know I'm gonna have to put this on the main queue. So dispatch queue.main.async. And now we'll do the switch off the result. Hit Command B for Xcode to give me my stuff. Fix, cool, delete this extra space. Okay, so now I'm gonna say let checked in profiles, and then here we'll do, we don't have that, right? This is where we're gonna get our dictionary back of counts, but we wanna set it to our published property that we don't have yet. So up here at the top, location map view model at published, and var, what do I call it? Checked in profiles. We'll do checked in profiles, and that is going to be of type. Here's where I'm gonna need CloudKit. See, I remember before I started typing. I'm gonna need CloudKit because my type is a ckrecord.id, and then the value at that key is going to be an int, right? And then we'll initialize that with an empty dictionary. So now, once I get the success case back on my get checked in profiles count, I do self.checkedInProfiles equals checked in profiles, the local one, and then failure, we'll come back to this. We'll say, you know, show alert, but break. We'll come back to that. Let's get it working first. Okay, so now let's call it on our location map view. So here in onAppear, remember if location manager.locations is empty, we're gonna get our locations, but here we're gonna do view model.get checked in counts. Now let's talk about these two network calls real quick because it is fine for them to fire off concurrently on two separate background threads. Real quick review, if you're not familiar with concurrent and serial, concurrent means they happen at the same time. However, the order is not guaranteed. So the one network call could come back before the other one time, and then that order could get flipped. So you don't want to do things concurrently if the order matters. Serial is one after the other, right? So if the order matters, then consider doing it serially. But the order doesn't matter, and here's why. Because both of these network calls return something that triggers a UI update. So even if checked in counts returns its data before we have our locations, well, that data is just going to be sitting there. And then when get locations finally comes in, like say it's really slow in this race. By the way, this is not a race condition. That's why I use that word race. So if get locations is really slow and comes in later, well, by the time it comes in, it's going to trigger a UI update, and we're already going to have our get checked in counts, data. So it's going to populate accordingly. So if there is no race condition here, we can put them on concurrent background threads, have them fire off separately, and the order they come back in doesn't matter. It's safe. So we're good there. So now that I'm getting getting my counts, I need to update our DDG annotation to take in the number. So let's go to that. That is in our custom views, map annotation, DDG annotation. See, right now it just takes in a location. Well, we want it to take in a number. That is going to be an int, right? That's why we return that from the dictionary. And then now our text here on line 28, previews, hate them. I'm going to fix this before. I just hate seeing this error. Okay, so fix, and we're just going to do 40, whoops, not there. 44 is our default value. Cool, whatever. Okay, so now in our text on line 28, we're going to do some string interpolation because we don't want to just do number, right? Well, we could just do number. Well, I forgot my quotation marks here. We don't want to just do number because we want to cap this out at 99. Like say there's 10,000 people checked into one location. I don't want our badge to say 10,000. Our UI can't handle that. So I want to cap it at 99. That's a reasonable thing. So what we can do is min, and then add another parentheses at the end, number or 99. So essentially what this is saying is give me the minimum of my number or 99. So if my number is 40, it's going to give me the number. However, if my number is 220, it's going to give me 99, right? So that's how we cap it at 99. And this is what I mentioned we were going to do on our additional profiles view, on our location list view that you see here. We'll come back to that in an optimization video. I just figured while I was here, might as well do it. It's pretty quick. So that is how we limit our number there. So now we'll do a Command B, and I should have some errors because I need, yes, to update my DDG location on my location map view, because now it takes in, not DDG location, I'm sorry, DDG annotation, because now it takes in a location and a number. So I'm gonna hit fix. So that number is an int. Now the number I'm going to pass in, I'm gonna put this on a second line because it is a little longer, is our view model dot checked in profiles, and it's for the value at our location dot ID. Right? Because remember, this is a dictionary, so the key is the location ID. That's what we've been using. So this will give me the value. However, you see it's optional. So what we can do is give it a default value like we did before of 0. So essentially what that's saying is if this is nil, right, I can't return nil for a number. So just make it 0 if that is nil, because that means nobody's checked in. Okay, so let's run this and see our badges in action, hopefully, right? First time running it after you've done a bunch of code, always roll the dice. And after I signed in on my settings, so annoying, you see our badges are there, except we're seeing all the zeros, right? We're gonna implement the logic where we don't want to see these zeros, right? If nobody's checked in, we only want badges to show up on places where people are checked in. So if I click on Chipotle, there we go. We have our 5 users checked in to Chipotle. Now I don't see anybody else checked in anywhere. So I'm assuming if I go to my profile, I'm not checked in anywhere, and I'm not. So let's go to locations. Let's check into, let's do Grace's Deli and Cafe. Checking in. There we go. There's Sean. Go to the map. And now you see there's now a 1 in Grace's Deli and a 5 in Chipotle. Cool. So it's working. Let's get rid of these zeros. That's annoying. So much clutter if nobody's checked in. So we'll stop running that. Go to our DDG annotation. Actually, I have that up here. Minimize this. So it's actually just a real quick check, right? If number greater than 0, show this text. If it's not greater than 0, don't do anything. Just omit it completely. Omit the whole badge. So now let's run it, and we should see badges only for where we are checked in. And there you go, right? I see Chipotle and Grace's Deli. Now let's test switching locations. So we'll go to locations, checkout of Grace's Deli, back. Let's check into Peggy Sue's, check in. There we go. Let's go back to the map. And you see Grace's Deli disappears, Peggy Sue's works. So that is our map annotation badges working. And that is it, kind of. That is the main functionality of the app. All the main features are now implemented and working. Of course, we're not done, right? We have a lot of refactoring to do. There's a lot of optimizations we can do. We have the whole second 90%, which is a lot of the haptic feedback, accessibility, dynamic type, better alerts. Like there's a whole bunch left to do, right? This is the perfect example of, again, the first 90% and the second 90%. This is what I would consider the first 90% being done. And now you see why I say it's called the first 90%, because if you built this, you would feel like you're very close to being done. But as we're going to talk about in an upcoming section called the second 90%, we're going to discuss all the stuff that is kind of under the hood and really sneaks up on you that takes a ton of time. So congratulations on getting the main functionality done. But now let's move on to the second 90%, optimizations, refactoring, all that good stuff.